All right. If you could say your name, what year you are.
My name is Tyler Hotes, and I'm a sophomore.
All right, Tyler. If you could just talk about when you got into sports, how that kind of came about for you.
Okay, so when I was growing up, I played a lot of sports with my friends, and that was just something that I did to, get into like making friend groups at an early age. My parents always encouraged me to do sports, so um, I played baseball and basketball primarily, but I also ran track and field all the way up through high school. But at an early age, I enjoyed going to play. I enjoyed participating in it. I enjoyed being around my friends. But I didn't have like an external interest in sports until I got older. So when I was in elementary school and even into middle school, I would go play sports. I would go out, and just hang out with my friends and go play basketball or something. But I never went out of my way to go online or to like read more about sports. It developed. It was something that developed later for me.
And yeah, you kind of mentioned your family members. So like, what's has sports always been a big part in your family of just enjoying it, kind of playing it?
Yeah, so my brother, he played baseball, and that was his big sport, and it still is his favorite sport today. He played high school baseball. He played in middle school. He's always been really dedicated to the game. My mom didn't play that many sports growing up as a kid, but she did run a little bit of track, and she was also involved in marching band, so she was always kind of around sports. And my dad, he played tennis in high school, and he liked to play golf when he was growing up, and still likes to play golf today. But yeah, there's definitely been a big family influence in sports. So obviously with the like advent of fantasy sports, so my dad plays fantasy baseball and fantasy basketball, and my brother's interested in that too. So I didn't start playing fantasy sports until I was around high school, and then like because of my friends, but mostly because of my brother and my father, like I started to get interested in more interested in sports because of them. So
You mentioned yeah, fantasy sports. What's one of the worst first memories that you have of sports, whether it was a game or something like that,
worst memory?
or just a memory?
Okay, so I have a good one and a bad one. My best one would be I remember I was in fourth grade and I hit my first home run in baseball, and my parents were both there, and my brother, who was in high school at the time, was had a job as an umpire, and he was actually umpiring that game. So to have everybody there for that situation was great. That was definitely one of my best childhood memories that I have was being around my friends and having my family all there to enjoy that moment with me. I haven't had, like I would say primarily bad experiences with playing sports as a kid, but I mean, there's obviously some races in track and field in high school that I wish I had back, and I probably wish I did better on. But I never really had too many serious injuries. I only broke my hand, knock on wood. That's the only thing I've done. So um, that's really it. Mostly my sports history has been really, really positive part of my life.
How did track and field and cross country become the sports that you chose to do in high school?
So at my high school, basketball was a really competitive sport. So I realized early on that to make it, you would have to be unbelievably dedicated to it, and that even with that, I still wouldn't have had a good chance at playing because of how talented our program is. This year, my high school program, like I've been looking into it, they actually only have one loss this season, and it's almost March. So we've always had a good basketball history at my high school. So I ran a little bit of track and field in middle school, and I enjoyed it a lot. But my first 2 years of high school, I wanted to try different sports, see if I can participate a little bit more. But when I rolled around to my junior year of high school, I said, I really need something to keep me active. I need something to like grow as a team with. I need something to, get me out of the classroom and get me into like doing some team building things. So track and field became something that I was naturally good at. I mean, I wasn't the best runner out there, but I started training for it and I started getting really involved with it. And I made a ton of good friends, and it just was something that was really positive to my high school experience.
And yeah, I mean, obviously, sports, playing sports and doing that, as you mentioned, probably wasn't going to be something you did as a profession. But when did you know that you wanted sports to be part of your profession in some capacity?
So in high school, I also wrote for my high school's newspaper, and it was junior year as well. So a lot of the things about my future of sports came from that junior year of high school. So I began writing as a sports writer, covering like the sports teams of our high school. And I just got really interested in it. I really enjoyed seeing what student athletes went through on a daily basis. I like talking with coaches, and that community is always something that's been interesting to me because I might not be the most athletically gifted person in the world, but I feel like I have a good understanding of sports. So to get to do that has been really eye-opening for me, and I continue to grow, and I continue to see it as an opportunity for me to do something that I really enjoy, but also something that I am pretty good at too.
What type of sporting events did you go to? Some of the first earlier memories that you have at certain events.
Okay, so my dad, pretty much my whole family graduated from Appalachian State. So my dad is a season ticket owner for football, and he was back, when I was growing up as a kid too. So some of the earliest memories I have with sporting events were coming to Appalachian State football games, not only in Boone, but also on the road at different places. We used to travel a decent bit. I have a lot of family in Cincinnati, Ohio, so I always grew up to watching baseball. So I would say baseball and football were the two predominant sports that I grew up seeing, and I would say Appalachian State and college football and Cincinnati Reds and Major League Baseball.
You mentioned Appalachian State, and yeah, some of those teams. How did that help your interest grow? Just having teams to root for.
So as you probably know, like App was very successful back when I was probably 10 years ago. They're successful now too, but especially at that point when they were in a lower division, winning championships, it was something that I always enjoyed. It was something that when I went to games with my dad, I felt like I was bonding with him and my brother. So it was a time where my dad works a lot, and my brother had a lot of different commitments, and my brother's 5 years older than me too. So it was a time where some of those differences and some of the things that were, different in our lives came together for one common goal. So that's something that I see that sports has, is that it can bring people with different ages and backgrounds together for one purpose. So.
And it brings people together, but it's also rivalries, which can be fun. What makes sports rivalries so great and so fun to kind of get bitter over?
Yeah, I try not to get as bitter, but I think it happens to every good sports fan. So I also grew up liking Ohio State sports because of a lot of family in Ohio. So I've always had a disdain for Michigan, and I've always had some really strong feelings towards teams that are rivals of the Carolina Panthers in National Football League. So rivalries just make it fun because even though you, quote, hate a team or you just despise playing them or losing to them, it makes you want to be better, and it makes you have somebody to compare yourself to. So without rivalries, I think that sports would still be very prevalent without rivalries, but they make them better, and they just build the storylines, which is obviously why a lot of people want to be engaged with sports anyways.
Now, you mentioned you wrote in high school, and when you got here, I know you wrote for the Appalachian Student newspaper for a year and a half. How did what was it like to kind of be around reporting on App State sports, and what were some of the experiences you got with that?
Yeah, so obviously I grew up with App State sports, but I never really was surrounded with some of the smaller sports that are here, such as, track and field, tennis, soccer, and some of the sports that I predominantly covered in my time with the Appalachian were some of those smaller sports that people don't talk about as much. And what I learned about them was that they have so much to offer, and they're so excited to see people coming to cover their events. So, in the first semester of college, I covered a lot of men's and women's soccer. And soccer has been a sport that's been growing in interest for me, like it is for a lot of Americans. And just to be able to see college players get to go out there and play and see that, a lot of these people are classmates of mine, it made me feel more connected to my campus community. And it also made me feel that I was growing as a journalist because I was widening the sports that I knew about. And as a sports journalist, it's very important to be able to be diverse in what you can cover. So.
And then you joined App State Athletics. Now you're working on the PR side of things as well. So you've been able to experience a little. I know you did an internship with Tennessee. What's kind of the differences between communications, PR, sports information, and media reporting?
So I would say, you learn in whatever PR like principal type class you're going to have, is that PR is mostly advocating, whereas you as a journalist you're more objective. And Though you do see that, most of the coverage that I had and even that you had when you were with the paper was objective, yet it was usually pretty positive about the athletics programs here. But the main difference is that the style of writing is different. It's usually a little more concise in the PR side, and the thing that I like about it the most is that we get to work with the student athletes a lot more. When I'm just being a student journalist, most of the times I'm just getting to talk with them for a few minutes, but now I'm around them more often. I see them come through the office sometimes. It's just I feel more connected to the students that I go to school with, and I go in the teams that I get to cheer for. So,
What's kind of the life like with App State athletics? How what's it kind of been like experience wise?
the experience has been good. So, as you said, I did do a summer internship with the University of Tennessee, working with their athletic department. So, it's been good to see a difference of a giant sports athletic program like the University of Tennessee is, to see a mid-level program like App State and see the differences. So I understand and I value my experience here at App more because of that experience at Tennessee. When I go into the office for a few times a week, I just really enjoy getting to sit down, getting to write either as a press release or if I do research. I would say research is possibly one of my favorite things to do, even though a lot of people don't like to admit it. PR and any type of media relations, there's a ton of research that goes into it. Some people shy away from that, but I like to take that head on because there's so much more you can learn, and it shows that if you're resourceful enough to do it and you can show that you can be good at it, you can do some things that you really do like to do in the future. So,
What are an example of cool like things you research like stat wise? Like what's an example of something that not everyone thinks about when you're in that PR side of things?
yeah, so one thing that I really enjoyed this semester was it was a little bit of a pain at first, but getting to go through old media guides for football and look at different records and just comparing them to what like football or basketball is like nowadays. So just even getting to read through all the old media guides or the old game programs to see like how much different football was viewed back then, or just how society was viewed back then in general. So you see just even opening up a cover from a 1975 game, you look at it and you say, wow, just college football looks so much different. Like everything in the magazine just looks so much different than it does now. So, but they still have the same common goal, which is playing a sport and having people come watch to enjoy it. So,
What type of impact do you think sports? I mean, obviously not everyone's into it, but some people are. What type of impact do you think it makes on the world?
so on the world, that's a big question. But as there's been a lot of people who talk about sporting events have so much that it means so much to them, but it also means more to the people that you're around too. So if you go look at different studies, and especially if you look at what happens during the World Cup and events like the Olympics, ones that are held every 4 years, they're monumental events where a lot of times, obviously, as in the Olympics that just happened, issues about North Korea and South Korea were at the forefront, but there was still a lot of talk about the athletes themselves, and there's a lot of talk about what was going on during the games. It's something like a deflection from the real world, which a lot of people think it is, but there is also a component where you can bring issues that are really contentious and you can alleviate them, because there's something about sports where you're watching an athlete compete, you're trying to cheer them on instead of disregard and try to jeer the other side. So,
What do you ultimately hope to do in the future, and how do you think Appalachian State is doing what you've been doing here with the athletics department will help you do that?
so there's a few things that I might want to do when I'm out of college, but as at a young age, I would really love to get a graduate assistant position to further my education in a sports information department, kind of like I'm doing right now with Appalachian. I would like to be able to move up in a bigger athletic program with that, but I also realize that I need to have a fallback plan. So I would really love to get interested with working with an organization such as like an NBA or NFL, even if it's at like a grassroots level, just to work with sports marketing. Or even, if for one day I have a calling to go back to journalism, I want to be able to pursue that journalism part of my degree to get those skills to where I can become relevant in that field too. So.
All right. Well, thank you, Tyler.